There's a line in a Tragically Hip song. Wait till you find out how they get paid. Right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, all right? It's been a wild year already. We're not quite done with 2024, and it's been pretty wild. I'll point out some quick ones on here. Anyone, put up your hand if you've heard of Rock4U 2024. Well, they have your passwords, so you should know about them. 10 billion passwords stolen in one swoop. I'm going to put that into perspective for you. If you wrote all those passwords down on a sticky note, it would fill the volume of this room twice over. Crazy. That's how many passwords they stole in one swoop. Never seen anything close like it. We've also seen some of our vendor friends make the news. We'll talk about them in a little bit. We've also seen some of the state actors kind of playing both sides, making money and attacking their neighbors. Never a good sign. So the big question then is, how is this all affecting us? Where is your money going that you invest in cyber solutions, that your company, invests in producing their product, going to market with whatever they do? How is this all making sense? And is it just the bad guys making money? Or are there some good guys making money off this too? So the landscape has changed in a kind of important way, right? We have been dealing for the last 2 decades with some pretty serious code-based malware. Sometimes we give it a name, we call it ransomware, or we call it extortionware, or we call it destructionware. But at the end of the day, man-made code. But what we've seen is, and we've all seen the movie, right? Some of them had attractive people like Angelina Jolie in it and plays a hacker and she's hands-on keyboard going against somebody. But that wasn't really the real world. That wasn't what we were facing on a day-to-day basis. We were facing spray and pray attacks that went out there and hit us. But it's changed again. We are seeing first-line defense. We are seeing out there in the field real-life man-led attacks where there is an active adversary or adversaries, groups of people sitting in front of keyboards actively working against your defenses. What's the difference? We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it is a very serious difference. The other thing is, and I was just talking with someone at our booth, they said, you know what? All the vulnerabilities and error in codes and breaches in code that we're seeing from every type of vendor out there, supply chains attack are like everywhere now. Every single industry has been faced with very serious supply chain issues. Hackers are no longer coming through your front door, that's too hard. They will take any door available. So they're going to work with someone who you trust, a vendor you work with, a supplier you work with, someone that's in your industry of go-to-market, right? It might be a transport company that takes your goods from your warehouse and they need to send you information. What if they get breached? Might just be an open door to you. So we're seeing this a lot. And we've moved from, this is the really scary one when we start to talk about money. We've moved from a ransomware problem to a ransom problem. Subtle difference. Ransomware, I hit a bunch of machines, I find some way of making them unusable, and I ask you for money for each of those machines. Ransom means I shut your company down, I wait till it's painful, and I ask you for money to put it back into operation. We'll talk about the difference there in terms of financial impact. The hackers do have a business model, and they're not that different from ours. They want to maximize revenue, reduce cost. Their marketing is real different, though. People always said, are hackers hiding? Nope. They want you to know exactly who they are. Why? It would be like if we didn't give the COVID virus a name. We just would have thought it's another cold, a lot of people suffering, very bad things happening to people, a lot of health risks out there, but not that scary because you're like, well, it's a cold, I don't even know. But we give it a name, and we start to attribute the effects to it, and people get scared. Do you have a cold? No, I have COVID. Well, that's way scarier. Hackers are the same thing, right? If you got hit with a worm, a virus, a piece of ransomware, and it didn't have a name, you'd be like, okay, this is not great. I got hit by something. But if you get hit by Lockbit or Wizard Spider, lots scarier. And you know that those gangs have a reputation of doing bad things to good people and being very difficult to overcome. So their marketing works. They let you know that they hit you so that when your neighbor gets hit, you go, oh man, I better pay, because when they hit Bob next door, he couldn't recover. It took him months to rebuild machines and all that. I better just pay because these are some serious bad guys. So you pay. That's how marketing works in the hacker world. Reduce cost, more with less, same thing we do, right? Use tools that maybe nation states are using, maybe other hacker gangs are using. I don't have to reproduce the wheel. Lower cost for me. Maximize revenue. We're going to come back to that ransom instead of ransomware idea, right? If I can take a company down and cripple it, a lot more money in the bank for that than there is for I encrypted a couple machines. So, man-made versus man-led. The concept is pretty simple, right? Man-made, piece of code, deployed. We're seeing a lot of spray and pray. We're seeing a lot of just reuse of the same code. Eventually, we do get good enough to combat it. And the main concept here is I'm using typically one or two layers of attack to get a couple systems and force you to pay pretty much per system that I encrypt or disable. Man-led, far more complex. Multi-layers of attack. So I'm not just going after your systems or compromising a user. I'm compromising a user. I'm compromising a system. I'm compromising a network. I might be compromising physical security. Think of the MGM attack. That was a very good example of a man-led attack. They didn't just compromise systems. They compromised MGM. They went, called help desk, said, hey, can you give me everyone's passwords? And help desk said, sure, we're efficient. Look at how fast I can give you everyone's. It's not how it happened. I'm just kidding. But that's essentially what they do. They use multiple layers of deception and attack to take your company down, to make your whole organization no function, right? Not producing the goods we produce, sales can't sell, the whole thing stops. And then they go, we want X% of your GDP, your annual earnings. We want this % of it, or we keep you down and make your company go out of business. So what does any good company do? Well, now this is a board-level conversation. It's no longer a secret conversation between the CFO and the CIO. It's now everybody sitting at the table going, are we willing to hand over 5% of our company to hackers to get our company back? And you go, yeah, because the other option is I walk away with 0% of my company because they will just shut you down. These are not attacks you just overcome overnight. So this is definitely changing the way they're attacking us, but it also changes the way we got to defend ourselves. So, cyber insurance. The long conversation. And I once heard a cyber insurer say to me, he goes, Matt, does the fact that I insure your car make you a worse driver? Does it make you want to get in more accidents? Well, no, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing. Cyber insurance works very different than car insurance or home insurance or other disaster type insurances. I am not paying a garage that is a criminal. Well, I take that back. Maybe some garages are criminal. It depends how they're built and how they operate. But essentially, I'm not paying criminals with my car insurance. Cyber insurance is absolutely 100% paying criminals. So, changes the conversation. So, what are some of the fundamental ideas? So, the University of Kent and in the Royal Garden in England did some fantastic research. They actually tried to get into the mentality of the hacker, and they said, well, does the fact that a cyber insurer pays you make you any different in the ways you attack or anything else? And they said no, of course, because they don't want to give away anything. But essentially they said, since the existence of cyber insurance, it hasn't been a massive impact on the ransom or financial gains in cyber criminality. That's 100% not true, because cybercrime goes up every single year. He mentioned it in my intro. We're now beating them all. We got drug trade beat, we got the arms trade beat, we got human trafficking beat. In fact, if you put them all together, we beat them by 2x. That's not the trophy we wanted. It's not even a participation trophy. So how do we deal with that? Well, a large portion of the payouts from insurance actually don't go to the criminals all the time. They sometimes just go to helping the company recover. I kind of like that part, right? Because it's an underestimated part of surviving an attack. Is what do I do the day after? How does my company survive? How do we get back to reputation? How do we catch up with production if we've been shut down for a little bit? That is absolutely what cyber insurance should be. That does not encourage the hackers. What might is, if I decide that every time a hacker hits, it's far faster for me to pay than to wait, try and negotiate, try and recover. It's more costly. Find me a cyber insurance firm or any insurance firm that is not profitable. So how does that work? Either we're paying them way too much, because if they can afford to pay my ransom and my recovery costs, why didn't I just keep that money and do it myself? There's a part we're missing. They're getting from both hands. And they've realized that recovery speed is the most financially, it's the best way to reduce the cost of an attack. The shorter time it lasts, so they can walk into any organization and say, hey, when you get hit, we're going to pay. It doesn't sound like what we should be doing, but that gets you up and running in an hour instead of 2 months. Sounds like a good proposition for any organization. And by the way, if you pay us this amount per month, we'll actually pay for all of that. So it sounds pretty good. But is it pushing hackers to use more complex tactics? Because often what we're seeing, or what we saw early on with a lot of cyber insurers, is they would bring in these sniper teams that knew how to beat all the bad, ugly ransomwares and malwares out there. So instead of paying out, they would actually come and help you recover. Hackers are like, no, we don't like that plan. So we're going to make stuff a lot meaner, a lot uglier, man-led attacks, and we're going to make it a lot harder to recover, so that instead of an insurance company sending in that sniper team to help your organization recover, they're sending in that sniper team to negotiate on your behalf. So they just basically hired a bunch of really mean salespeople who are like, nope, not $1,000 per machine. We'll take 5. And the hacker goes, then 6 days. Okay, we'll give you 600 per machine. Then we'll do 4 days. And this is actually how a live ransomware negotiation goes with insurance companies. It's a wild thing to have ever seen it, right? The hacker's talking how many days down, the cyber insurance negotiator's talking money, and they try and meet in the middle. Usually, the hacker gets the best of that. He who holds the keys, right? It's a cash for keys answer. So we know that the insurance companies are making a little bit of money off our sorrow. What about the nation states? There's no wars going on in the planet right now. Everyone's just super peaceful and cool, right? Don't think so, right? 2 pretty major nation-state level events. All you got to do is Google either of the major wars going on in the planet right now with the word cyber next to it, and you'll find out how both sides are using this as their primary form of attack. Well, that part's pretty obvious, but what does that mean for us in the real world? Well, if I was a hacker and I wanted to go after a company, I could build my own code. Maybe if I was a really smart developer, I could probably write my own code. Or I could use the brain trust of some of the richest organizations on the planet, countries, use their brain power, their tools, to go out and attack. So how does that work? We'll go back for a second. So what happens is the nation states, wars are very expensive. So what the nation states have started to figure out is, well, if I take the tech, the code that I built, if I was Ukraine and I was trying to, a bunch of hacktivists and I was trying to take down a power plant in Russia, if I take that code and I sell it on the dark web to other hackers, guess what? I just funded my war. But what that also means is the hacker just got way better, because the nation state guys have got a massive advantage. Their targets are bigger, they've got all the budget in the world to throw at this, and now they're actually getting paid on the back end because actual criminals are funding their war. This is true. If any of you have spent time on the dark web, you will find actual transactions between nation state actors and normal criminal everyday hackers that are just trying to take down the local retail store because they didn't get the refund on the item they tried to return yesterday, right? So a 13-year-old sitting in their basement, if they've got some cryptocurrency because no one's policing that stuff, they can ship that over to, either side of any of these wars and get some pretty nasty stuff. And maybe there's just a girl they liked in school that's not returning their calls. Scary. This is the one that might hurt a little, because no secret, I work for a cybersecurity vendor. So no one likes this part of the presentation, especially my competitors, and maybe even my own marketing department. So if by the end of this show, I'm no longer Matt Balser, Director of Solution Engineering for SentinelOne, I'm just Matt Balser looking for work on LinkedIn, you'll know why. So we're in a very precarious situation. Of course, a lot of us want to help. We really do. But in order to help, we have to sell something to you. When do we typically make our biggest sales? After one of you gets hit. It's not fun, but it's the reality. I make money because customers are threatened. I make money because customers get hit. Ugly secret. Now, if we're abusing that power, that's even worse. If we are truly the ones behind attacks, I don't think SentinelOne is. I'll look into it if anybody has questions, but I'm pretty sure we're not the ones behind attacks. But we're certainly not running from them. We certainly don't walk into an organization and say, oh, you just got hit, we can't help. Sucks. We walk in and say, oh, you got hit, watch us save the day. Which is a good thing, but it means you probably just paid for the ransomware incident, now you're going to pay us so that you don't have another ransomware incident? The line gets blurry. We carry a lot of trust. What happens when this sort of stuff starts happening? Microsoft's never made the news because they've been breached or allowed a major breach, right? It got to the point where CISA, the organization in the US that monitors security for the entire nation, had to step in and say, Microsoft is not a security vendor. Microsoft is part of the problem. Microsoft is scary. They abuse that power. Microsoft allowed a massive breach to walk right through our door and didn't even know about it till months later. The other vendors up here, the infrastructure guys, it's not their fault. They have a shared responsibility model. Anyone want to know what the share of that responsibility is? They provided the light and the light bulbs. You provide everything else, including security. That's the shared responsibility model. Look into it. It's absolutely true. Doesn't mean that they leave you on their own, but they state where they can help and where they can't. At the end of the day, your data, your applications, your information, the way your company runs, it's your responsibility to protect it. They don't hide that. Because if they tried to play any other role, we can see it. They've failed quite a bit. So we trust now our data, our most critical applications with these, cloud vendors, and we hope. Stop hoping. It's your responsibility for whatever you put there. They make that pretty clear. They already don't like me, guys, so if you're going to run over to CrowdStrike's booth and say, hey, he just showed us what happened to you guys and was really mean about it, They already know, so it's okay. But there's a big question going on right now in our industry. Should vendors and companies themselves who don't put adequate security in place, should they be held accountable? It's a good question. I'm assuming all y'all are security folks in some way, shape, or form. If you put security in place at your organization and it fails, do you want an auditor coming in and saying, man, you didn't do enough. You cost the economy a certain amount of money. We're going to fine you. Almost any other industry that has this much financial impact on the world, economic impact on the world, is regulated. Cybersecurity, both sides of it, the vendors, the solutions, the infrastructure, and the people who sit in organizations at the head of the table, managing and directing security for these organizations, are not regulated in any way, shape, or form. Sure, we have things like FedRAMP if you want to get into a government organization, or in Canada, PBMM, and we have other small compliancy regulations, but those are basically just so you can answer the RFP, to be honest. They're not actually trying to police how and what we do in cybersecurity. So this was a big, big lesson for all of us in the industry. I'm not really trying to pick on them, but anyone know what the definition of a DDoS attack is? Okay, I'll make it real simple for those of you who are more technical than me. I'll try and make it real simple. Vulnerability in a piece of software or infrastructure. Human error in process. Something that ends up on your systems that takes those systems down in one way, shape, or form. Makes them unusable, denies the service of that system or network. Sound familiar? Sucks to say it. This was the biggest DDoS attack in the history of time. And yes, the hacker group is one of us. Sucks, but it's true. So, should we have them stand before Congress and explain why they had the impact on the economy, and they'll say 9 million machines blue-screened in under an hour? It's actually quite a larger number than that, but we'll let them play fair. Should they not sit in front of Congress? Well, they did. They sent that guy, and we're not trying to put him down. Adam worked very hard. He brought his yellow legal notepad with him and kept looking down on it, pretending he was reading something. And he said things like, yeah, we all inject into the kernel. There was no one from our industry there to fact check him. Like those of you who know, like the CISA, Jen Easterly, she should have been sitting there with a mic going, that's not true. That's not true. He said, we sent this update out universally, simultaneously to all customers, including government. That's a FedRAMP violation. True story. It happened. I'm just stating facts here. You can hate me for not liking them. I work for their competitor. It's okay. But at the end of the day, this is not a CrowdStrike problem. This is an industry problem. We let this happen. Nobody asked enough questions at the start. How many people, when an EDR vendor walks into your organization, tries to sell you their software, goes, can you please explain your agent architecture to me before I even let you deploy your first agent? I can tell you I'm in this business. People don't ask. Do people ask about our update processes? People don't ask. Well, now they do, because nobody wants to be on this list. So now they ask me. They never used to ask me. So we've been putting this stuff in place. We are the highest risk to any infrastructure, and nobody asks. And you know what? They had them sit in front of Congress, and everybody had a great laugh about it after, right? 9 million machines. More importantly, one of the most financially impacted, economic impact of the CrowdStrike outage was massive, right? We're all familiar now that Delta's suing them for $500 million. That's only what they could put in paper. They actually don't understand the full financial impact of what that outage represented. And this has happened before. And it'll happen again. Why? The head of CrowdStrike went on their earnings call and said, we're not changing our agent. The truth was, They're not changing, or they're not saying they're changing it, because if they did, they could be sued by more people than just Delta. Because everyone would go, oh, so they knew there was a flaw in their agent? And they deployed it everywhere? Well, they have to come out and say, no, 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 there's no flaw. We're not changing anything. It was just a process guy. It was Bob and we fired him. Well, it was Adam. I haven't looked him up on LinkedIn since, but I'm guessing he's not at CrowdStrike anymore. Probably got the best parachute of all time. And if he is, good for Adam, right? Got to sit in front of Congress like a big boy, say a bunch of nonsense words that none of them understood, and he moved on. And the best part is, CrowdStrike is suing their customers back. Absolutely, look it up. They're suing Delta. They're suing Delta for suing them. I'm not a lawyer. We could probably all figure out why. They're just trying to make it go away. But it's kind of an interesting thing, right? So, I don't know. The answer is I don't know. How do the poets make their money? Wait till you find out how they get paid. We get paid when bad stuff happens. But that's a huge responsibility, and we shouldn't take it lightly. We should be looking at this problem going, if you're going to trust me with the security of your organization, and you're going to trust me with the function of your organization, and I have the deepest injection into all your systems, I shouldn't take that lightly. I should do the right things at the right time. I should be there to help. And yeah, sure, if there's an opportunity for us both to make money, your organization sells something, they make money, it's great. I want to keep them running. I'm part of the machine. Yeah, so I should probably get paid to do that. But I shouldn't take that responsibility lightly. And I truly do think that at some point, we have to get the higher powers involved to take a look at this and say, hey, you're not doing things the right way. You're not serving your customers. You're posing a great risk to our economy. And so we're going to fine you until you stop or you get better. I think that's the responsibility we carry on. That's crazy. If my boss is here, I've already lost my job. He didn't like to hear that because he doesn't want to get fined. But I think it's the truth. I think someone should be overseeing. Because I sat last week at a table full of CISOs, all of them with one of my competitors, and a lot of them wearing that badge. I said, so that was pretty crazy. You guys going to change? Nah. Endpoint projects are expensive. We don't really want to get into that again. And they promised it'll never happen again. And they also told us, you're the same, that you do the exact same things and it could happen to you. So why would I change? Again, I'm waiting for someone with the fact checker going, that's not true. We're not all the same. You're saying that so you don't get sued anymore, right? Because this is the truth. At the end of the day, nobody wants to take responsibility. The security workers at every organization are under way too much pressure to deliver projects at a lower cost, so they can only do what they do. I've never walked into an organization and said, man, we just have this abundance of security people. I've got like 50 analysts that are taking a nap right now, waiting for the next shift to start. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. So everybody is under immense pressure to deliver, and with that bias, it becomes very difficult to make all the right decisions. It's not your fault. You're limited in resources, limited in funding. So in other organizations similar to that, think of healthcare, right? We can't always expect hospitals to make the right decisions. So there are regulators that come in and say, your hospital needs to meet these very specific standards. Why not cybersecurity? Why not? Thank you very much. That's my time. Appreciated everybody stopping by, taking your time with me. Do believe, no, I'm even ran out of time for questions. We've got a booth over there, Sentinel 1. Feel free to stop by. Love to chat. Thank you so much for your attention and time.